Today we're discussing a book titled Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. The author, Yuval Harari, was born in 1976 and is a young Israeli historian with a PhD in history from Oxford University. His previous book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, was an international bestseller. If you're interested, you can find the link in the description below the video. In contrast to Sapiens, which explored where humans came from, Homo Deus predicts where humanity is heading. Why the rush to read this book? It wasn't for the sake of following a trend, but because Harari has a unique perspective on issues. For instance, what will humans become when artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence, when genetic editing becomes commonplace, or when economic growth reaches new heights? These are pressing questions, and Harari refreshes our views profoundly through his analysis. This book addresses three main points. First, it's not our understanding of reality that drives social change, but the realities we imagine, namely, the power of religion, with humanism being the modern world's creed. Second, there's a transaction between science and humanism, strengthening our belief in humanism and driving us to reshape the world and ourselves according to this belief. Third, humanism has a fundamental flaw that will prevent its narrative from continuing in the future, necessitating a new story. What are humanism and religion? What is this transaction? Let's delve into these concepts. The first half of the book discusses how it's not our understanding of actual reality that pushes societal change, but the realities we imagine, namely, the power of religion, with humanism being the contemporary global religion. A lot of what Homo Deus discusses is actually about history. Why history? According to Harari, to understand the future, one must first understand history, but not to see history as deterministic or to search it for patterns to boost our ambition. Rather, it's to free ourselves from the shackles of history to become more liberated. In historical terms, humans have always been plagued by famine, plague, and war. Catastrophes that once erupted could wipe out a significant portion of a country's population. Now, thanks to advances in technology, economics, and politics, we've got these issues under control. Only 5% of the people died in wars throughout the 20th century. Territorial conquest has become outdated in the knowledge economy era. In 2010, only 1 million people died from famine and malnutrition. So, what's the new challenge for humanity? According to Harari, it's certainly not about enjoying our good life now, strengthening environmental protections, and reproducing responsibly. Instead, humanity is never satisfied. We're now embarking on 3 major projects. The title of Homo Deus translates to God-man in Latin, with the subtitle, A Brief History of Tomorrow. We are evolving from Homo sapiens into Homo Deus, and the 3 major projects we're undertaking are the pursuit of immortality, the pursuit of happiness, and attaining godlike powers. These are predictions, not declarations. Understanding history is crucial because it liberates us from our past to imagine different destinies. Many things and concepts are taken for granted, but with a historical perspective, one can see that things weren't always this way, nor will they necessarily remain so in the future. For example, the idea that humans are the most precious is nearly indisputable, irrespective of ideology. But is this truly the case? The book first tells us that this wasn't always believed in the past. During the hunter-gatherer era, people were animists, believing that all entities possess a spirit and animals were seen as equals to humans. Hunter-gatherers didn't consider humans to be the most precious. They needed to understand what animals were thinking to track their prey and avoid predators. After the agricultural revolution, many animals were domesticated, ending this relationship of equality. Then, as animism no longer satisfied the needs of the times, theism developed. People only needed to communicate directly with gods who would arrange everything from good weather to making animals serve humans. Christianity emerged as a product of the agricultural revolution, Thus, in agricultural societies, God was deemed the most precious, humans second, and other animals followed. However, once the theory of evolution emerged, the Christian narrative collapsed. The soul concept and evolution are incompatible. Furthermore, the transaction between humans and gods was no longer necessary, as modern humans had the power to dominate animals and nature without needing divine protection. Then a new theory was needed to justify why humans were superior to other animals. As children, we learn that humans are superior because we can make tools. Yet, for the millions of years that primitive humans made and used tools, despite individuals' intelligence surpassing that of other animals, humans as a whole were not considered the most precious. What truly makes humans precious and superior to other animals? Harari believes it's consciousness. Consciousness is a subjective experience. Sometimes you feel anger, sometimes desire, sometimes fear. You might not be able to ascertain if others have these experiences, but you're certain about your own. But why do humans need consciousness? If a robotic vacuum cleaner runs low on battery, it simply returns to its dock to recharge without needing to feel hunger or desire for food. You might argue that these sensations are simply signals and decision-making systems endowed by evolution. If you don't feel pain when someone pokes you with a needle, you wouldn't know to avoid being poked next time, potentially leading to rapid death. Right? Biologists used to explain consciousness this way. But the situation now is that the more biologists understand about the human brain's signaling and decision-making systems, the more they believe we don't actually need consciousness. Whether it's past memories or new external stimuli, for the brain, it's just a series of electrical signals and chemical reactions. When we see danger approaching and the visual signal reaches our brain, the brain sends a nerve signal to the legs, and the legs start running immediately. This process is indistinguishable from that of a computer. So why do we still need to experience fear as a subjective experience? As of 2016, biologists can't explain consciousness. In fact, the best scientific answer might be that humans don't need consciousness at all. To understand the human brain's decision-making processes and predict human behavior, just explaining it through nerve signal transmission is sufficient. We could entirely treat humans as computers. Consciousness might just be an extra byproduct or spiritual pollution of this computer. Regardless, we have to admit humans are conscious, and consciousness is significant. But animals are conscious too. Scientists now have ample evidence to show that all mammals and birds, along with some reptiles and fish, are sentient. Thus, humans have consciousness can't serve as the basis for humans are the most precious. So, what exactly makes humans stronger than animals? Humans' real strength lies not in consciousness nor in individuals imagining subjective realities, but in something called intersubjectivity, the fictional realities we collectively believe in. God, nations, money, corporations, values. These are all products of our collective imagination. For instance, what's the significance of getting married in a church? If your spouse, parents, pastor, and the audience all believe the church and marriage are meaningful, then doing so is indeed meaningful. This meaning is a kind of collective imagination. Humans are stronger than animals because we can efficiently organize many people around a fictitious significance. The power of an individual is limited. Collective cooperation is the key. A well-trained army can easily defeat a much larger, unorganized group if they coordinate effectively. If you're planning a revolution, don't ask how many people agree with your views. Ask how many can cooperate effectively. Cooperating with many is different from cooperating with a few. Cooperation among a few might involve fairness, character, perhaps even attractiveness. But why would so many in ancient Egypt willingly dedicate themselves to the pharaoh's grand plans? Why do we accept a fundamentally unfair social order? Because we all believe in God's plan, in national interests, in ethical morals, and these are all just our collective imaginations. Collective imaginations change constantly. People might believe in God for a while, then stop believing later. So, what historians care most about is what collective stories, what fictions, people come up with in each era. Moreover, we not only have stronger collective imaginations, but we also use these fictional meanings to transform the world and even ourselves. Does fiction really have such power? Harari says, currently, fiction is much more significant than reality. For example, a corporation is one of our collective fictions. A corporation isn't its founders, managers, or shareholders, but it has its own property, bank accounts, tax obligations, and legal responsibilities. Making corporation independent from individuals is a good system, but let's not forget, corporation is also a fictitious community. Many important things are fictional. Harari says, powerful human organizations don't care about the truth. They care about imposing their invented beliefs on everyone and using these beliefs to change the real world. Religion is especially so. Now, many scholars prove that much of the Bible was invented later, equating Christianity to having deceived everyone at all times. But what can we do about it? So, it's not our understanding of actual reality that drives social change, but the realities we imagine, namely, the power of religion. Now let's look at humanism, which is the religion of the modern world. There's a transaction between science and humanism, strengthening our belief in humanism and driving us to reshape the world and ourselves according to this belief. The powerful force of fiction doesn't lie in how close it is to reality, but in how effectively it organizes people and promotes their cooperation. In this sense, it's not only belief in supernatural phenomena or gods that can be considered religion. Many things can be called religion. The book defines religion as satisfying these three features. First, it claims to have a set of moral rules that weren't invented by humans and can't be changed by humans, which people must follow. Second, it promises certain benefits to those who follow these rules. Third, its purpose is to consolidate the social order it envisions. The first feature is key. Religion is a set of rules that bind people. From this perspective, the human rights that Western liberals talk about are actually a form of religion. For example, a German child asks his father why we must accept refugees. His father replies, "It's not my idea, nor is it Chancellor Merkel's idea." Everyone has equal human rights, a natural law. Even the Chancellor can't do anything about it, so we must help the refugees as much as possible. You might say that today is the era of science, where we do everything based on experiments and evidence, so religion should be useless, right? The reality is that we can't live solely by science. Science and technology can tell us how to do things and give us great power, but when facing moral choices about whether or not to do something, we must rely on religion. Don't forget what we just said. Not only is Christianity a religion, but so are liberal democracy and human rights. If you want to maintain large-scale social order, you can't do it with just science. Religion focuses on order, while science and technology focus on power. So, can science and religion not interfere with each other? That's not possible either. Religion provides moral guidance, usually in 3 steps. For example, should abortion be allowed? The Catholic Church opposes any form of abortion and goes through these 3 steps. The first step is moral judgment. Human life is sacred. Science can't say anything about this. If you say it's sacred, then it's sacred. The second step is factual statements. Life begins at the moment of conception, so even just a fertilized egg cannot be aborted. Here, science has a lot to say. The third step is moral guidance. Based on the previous moral judgment and factual statements, the Catholic Church demands that abortion not be allowed. If in the second step, scientists determine that a fertilized egg isn't alive, then the guidance in the third step doesn't hold up. Religion can not only organize a large number of people, but also provide guidance for moral judgments. In the past, science has always helped religion expand its power, but starting now, science will begin to challenge religion. Speaking of religion, The biggest current religion is none other than humanism. What is humanism? Western countries' mainstream ideology of liberalism is the largest branch of humanism. Understanding the origins and development of liberalism is key to truly understanding Western countries. Modernism, in essence, is a transaction. Humanity gave up the meanings of life bestowed by God in exchange for the power of science. A medieval person, because of his faith in God, felt his life was full of meaning, believing that everything was arranged by God, and even the worst situations would eventually have a perfect ending. God has my back. As part of the transaction, this medieval person had to follow religious guidance and didn't have much freedom. In the modern world, we have the power of science and don't need to follow God's arrangements. As a trade-off, God also doesn't provide meaning for our lives anymore, but we can find our own meanings. One of these meanings is pursuing economic growth. We often say that people are most devoted to economic growth, using it to solve all problems, but Harari says this is true for all countries. Economic growth, by enlarging the economic pie, can solve various issues, including some moral dilemmas. However, economic growth is an unreliable method. You can't always maintain high-speed growth. Harari says that humanity's real strategy in this God is dead era is humanism. Humanism advocates worshiping human nature, replacing the divine role in religion with human experience, and creating meaning for the external world. Simply put, you should listen to your inner voice. What is good? What is bad? In the past, God decided. Now, your heart decides. If you feel good, it's good. If you feel bad, it's bad. Harari gives an example. Suppose a married woman has an extramarital sexual relationship. She doesn't know if it's right or wrong, so she seeks advice from a psychologist. Modern psychologists, much like medieval priests, focus on the person's feelings about the matter to assess right and wrong. Of course, the woman might feel fine, but her husband could be hurt, and if they divorce, their children might also be hurt. These factors must also be considered. But in any case, the examination here is all about human feelings, not about any natural law. Based on this principle, homosexuality is certainly not a problem, as long as the two people involved feel good about it and don't harm anyone else. In 2015, after the French magazine Charlie Hebdo published cartoons satirizing Muslims, which led to a terrorist attack, global public opinion condemned the terrorists. But some Muslim groups also spoke up. They condemned Charlie Hebdo, but not by saying these cartoons desecrated God and violated God's will. They said, Charlie Hebdo hurt the feelings of millions of Muslims. So if you want to be a moral person in this era of humanism, don't ever hurt others' feelings. This is absolutely not a joke. Humanists can't just decide to be one. You must work hard in practice to become a truly moral person. Harari proposes that for humanism, there's a formula. Knowledge equals experience times sensitivity. As we've said before, consciousness is our subjective experience. The experience mentioned here means the same thing, which includes all sorts of feelings, emotions, and thoughts you go through. Sensitivity has two meanings. First, you can't just have experiences without paying attention to and scrutinizing your experiences. Second, you must allow these experiences to influence and even transform you. A civilized person must be good at noticing subtle feelings. Otherwise, you're just a brute. Harari says, in our lifetime, sometimes we hurt others or are hurt. Sometimes we sympathize with others or are sympathized with. If you pay attention to and experience these feelings of hurt and sympathy, you'll become more sensitive, and these experiences will become a good form of moral knowledge for you. Gradually, you'll be able to discern right from wrong, become wiser, and that's the journey of life. Under the influence of humanism, everything we do is in pursuit of experience. Look at travel companies, they don't sell you plane tickets, but a series of experiences. Going to a high-end restaurant isn't just about eating a meal, but about experiencing the environment, music, candlelight, and the food. When we watch Western movies, especially road movies, they often use the Wizard of Oz formula, which is about showing characters' emotional journeys. At the beginning of the fairy tale, the Tin Man lacks a heart, the Scarecrow lacks a brain, and the Lion lacks courage. But by the end of the fairy tale, each character has acquired the quality they desired, and their personalities are more complete. All humanists believe that human inner experiences are the most important, and all morality should start from here. But there are many people in the world, and different people's inner feelings will definitely be different, leading to conflicts. How do you deal with these conflicts? This divides humanism into three factions. Orthodox humanism, which we refer to as liberalism today, is the main ideology in developed countries in Europe and America. Liberals believe that everyone's inner experience is important, enriching the world, so you should grant everyone the right to freely express themselves. This sounds nice, but it's difficult to implement. For example, how many refugees should Germany accept? Should refugees be given the same benefits as citizens? How can you make decisions that neither hurt the refugees' feelings nor the citizens' feelings? Socialist humanists think that liberals overemphasize individual feelings, especially each person's own feelings. Evolutionary humanists, however, believe that the idea that everyone's feelings are important is fundamentally wrong. Some people are simply better than others, and we should allow the superior ones to stand out. If your so-called superiority is based on racial classification, then you're a Nazi. The battles between these three factions, through 2 world wars and a Cold War, eventually resulted in the victory of the liberals. Now, the world is under the rule of liberalism. Let's look at the principles of liberalism. Politically, liberals believe we should listen to voters' opinions. Voters should explore their inner voices. You vote for whoever you like. Economically, implement a free market, giving decision-making power to consumers who are always right. Morally, if you feel good and don't hurt others' feelings, you can do it. In education, teachers no longer emphasize textbook standard answers, but inspire students to think for themselves. In art, we should trust each person's own eyes. If you think it's beautiful, then it's beautiful. Liberalism seems very reasonable. It grants everyone the right to free expression. Capitalist countries indeed produce the richest products, create the richest artworks, and everyone lives very freely. But from Harari's perspective, an important factor in liberalism's eventual victory was technological progress. But if we look forward to the future from this moment, liberalism is facing a crisis, which is the third point of this book. The essential flaw in liberalism will make its story unworkable in the future, and it needs a new story. Liberalism in the future, even now, has begun to encounter a crisis. The essential flaw in liberalism will make its story unworkable in the future. It needs a new story. If you think carefully about the starting point of liberalism, you'll find it makes a lot of sense. Everyone's experiences may differ, but everyone's experiences have the same value. From this sense, you and I are equal. When voting, I have one vote, and you can only have one vote too. Harari says, liberalism values each person's experience based on 3 assumptions. First, I have an indivisible self. If I carefully examine it, I can discover my true inner self, and I should listen to this self's voice. Second, this true self is completely free, meaning I have free will. Third, no one knows me better than myself. Only I know what I want. So whether as a voter or a consumer, I must make my own decisions, and no one else should make decisions for me, no matter who they are. What's the crisis in liberalism? It's that we don't need to wait for the future. Right now, science has enough evidence to prove that all 3 assumptions are wrong. Let's first look at the first assumption. I have an indivisible self. I can discover my true inner self, and I should listen to this self's voice. Now scientists are very sure that our brains don't have just one voice. Each of our emotions is a voice, and these voices constantly argue in our brains. Harari introduced several startling experiments. We know that the human brain has two hemispheres. The left hemisphere is responsible for the right side of the body, including the eyes and hands, and the right hemisphere is responsible for the left side. The left hemisphere has language functions and focuses on logic. The right hemisphere focuses on visual thinking. Normally, these two hemispheres are connected by a thick nerve bundle, allowing them to communicate directly. But some doctors, to treat severe epilepsy patients, will cut this nerve bundle, preventing direct communication between the left and right brains. This provides scientists with a great opportunity to study the brain. One little boy was such a patient. Researchers first asked him a question. What do you want to be when you grow up? The boy answered, I want to be a cartographer. Note, it was definitely his left brain that said this, because the right brain can't speak. Then, researchers showed a piece of paper to the boy's left eye, blocking his right eye. So his left brain didn't know what was written on the paper, but his right brain saw it. The paper asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? The right brain can't speak, but researchers provided the boy with puzzle blocks with various letters. The boy's left hand immediately started moving and quickly spelled out a word on the table, race car driver. The boy had at least two selves. His left brain wanted to be a cartographer, his right brain wanted to be a race car driver. Which one is his true self? Another similar patient was involved in an experiment. Researchers showed a picture of a snow seen to the patient's left eye and a chicken claw to his right eye, and each eye didn't know what the other saw. Researchers asked him, what did you see? The answer was, of course, a chicken claw, because the right brain can't speak. Then researchers brought over a bunch of pictures and asked the patient to pick one related to what he just saw. The right hand chose a picture of a chicken, but the left hand also picked a picture, one with a snow shovel. Now the key moment came. Researchers asked the patient, why did you also pick this shovel? Is it related to the chicken claw? The patient answered, speaking with his left brain, because chickens might poop, and this shovel can be used to scoop it. That is, the left brain didn't see the snow scene, so it had no idea why the left hand chose the shovel, but to keep its logic consistent, it made up a reason on the spot. This is like if the CIA conducted a subversive operation overseas, reporters asked the White House, and the White House spokesperson didn't know about the CIA's operation but still made up a story on the spot. Maybe the patient really believed his made-up reason. He had no idea that different departments in his brain sometimes acted independently. So, do we have one true self? If not, which one is the true self? Apart from the left-right brain division, Harari also mentioned another way to divide the self, the experiencing self and the narrative self. Simply put, when the narrative self evaluates an experience, it doesn't feel the duration of the experience but only cares about the most intense parts and the ending of the experience. This is called the peak-end rule. For example, if a doctor performs a rectal examination on a patient, it's very painful, right? The best thing a doctor can do is give the patient a good experience near the end. Although this makes the procedure longer and the most painful moment is still just as painful, the patient's subsequent evaluation will be much better. The evaluation is given by the patient's narrative self, but obviously, the experiencing self doesn't like a longer operation. It was betrayed. Harari says, our usual self-identity is roughly this narrative self. The narrative self is always telling stories. The same hunger, if the narrative self says it's for an afternoon medical exam, we feel it's nothing. If it says it's for Ramadan, we feel it's quite hard. If it says it's because there's no money to buy food, we feel it's very sad. Sometimes the narrative self has to tell an unreal story to make us feel our lives are meaningful, or at least logically consistent. The more biology understands the human brain, the more it determines that humans are just a computer. All processes are merely physical and chemical, and humans, like animals, are just a collection of various algorithms. What's so special? Sometimes external stimuli trigger certain responses in us. Sometimes we also make truly random decisions, but we can't control these random decisions. Let's look at the second assumption of liberalism again. This true self is completely free, meaning I have free will. What is free will? For example, if someone says I can pursue whatever I want, then I'm free. Wrong, that's not what having free will means. Gorillas, dogs, and parrots can also pursue whatever they want. There's nothing advanced about it, they're just driven by desire. What scientists mean by free will is whether a person can choose their own desires. The answer is no. Many experiments have shown that human desires are not controlled by consciousness. Consciousness is controlled by desires. For example, in one experiment, scientists gave participants a switch that they could choose to turn on or off at will. At the same time, scientists used functional magnetic resonance imaging to observe the participants' brains in real time. The result was that several hundred milliseconds, or even several seconds, before the participants pressed the switch, before they were even aware of their choice, the scientists, looking at the brain imaging, already knew how they would choose. Scientific instruments can know what you want to do before you do. Not only that, but scientists can also control what you want to do. Of course, this experiment can't be done with humans. But mouse experiments have been very successful. Scientists inserted 3 electrodes into a mouse's brain, then they could remotely control the mouse, making it go straight, climb ladders, or circle around a trash heap, anything, just like a remote-controlled toy robot. Animal rights activists might say this is too cruel for the mouse. Not really. What scientists are controlling is actually the mouse's desire. Wherever the remote points, the mouse doesn't feel forced to go there. The mouse wants to go there. It feels very happy. So, does the mouse have any free will? Humans are no different from mice. Israeli scientists implanted a chip in the brains of depression patients, which can make them feel happy. Once, a patient asked why he felt even more depressed these past few days. The scientists checked his brain and found that the chip had run out of power. Human consciousness is just a collection of various thoughts, feelings, and desires, with various desires rising and falling in our brains every moment. Your decisions may be the result of negotiations between different desires, but you can't control which desires will attend these negotiations. So where is the self, and where is free will? If I don't have a single self, then who is voting? Who is shopping? Who bears the consequences? How can I ensure that the decisions it makes are in my interest? If I don't have free will, and the outside world can directly control what I want, then what's so sacred about the vote I cast? How much value does my experience have, and what right do I, as an individual, have to demand that society values individual freedom over collectivist values of liberalism? Without free will, without a single self, the basic premises of liberalism are denied. But you might say, liberalism, as a religion, has been running well for the past 100 or 200 years, with economic growth and cultural prosperity. Regardless of what scientists say, why don't we just pretend we have free will and a self, and aren't we living well? So far, the third assumption of liberalism is still correct. No one knows me better than myself. Maybe I often make mistakes when making choices, causing me to inadvertently harm my own interests, but letting others make decisions for me would definitely be worse. But Harari says that from now on, which is actually already starting, the liberals are also wrong about this one. In the past, science proved that God was unreliable, giving room for the development of anthropocentric liberalism. Now, science has delivered a heartfelt blow to liberalism, because computer algorithms know you better than you do. For your own benefit, you, me, all of us, should let algorithms make decisions for us. Thus, all 3 assumptions of liberalism have been overturned, and liberalism really has no meaning anymore. The real future is more complex than this. From the current perspective, the world has 3 trends, corresponding to 3 different destinies for humans. First, artificial intelligence is so powerful that humans, as economic and military workers, have no value, and then the political and economic system will consider people worthless. Second, perhaps humanity as a whole is still valuable, but each individual is not. Third, Perhaps some individuals are still valuable, but they are superhumans who have undergone biological upgrades. Harari doesn't judge which of these three trends will have the fastest and most obvious effect. Let's assume that for a considerably long time in the future, all three trends will proceed simultaneously. Then, in the 21st century, all of humanity will be divided by technological progress into three types of people: the useless class, the non-autonomous people, and godmen. These three types of people cannot possibly be equal. It might be like the current Indian caste system, or like the division between 19th century Europeans and Africans. At that time, when we look back at today's era, which emphasizes the equal value of everyone's experiences under liberalism, it will seem like a beautiful dream. First, let's talk about useless people. Why is liberalism the main ideology in developed Western countries and not flourishing in developing countries? Because in industrialized countries, human labor is a very precious resource. In the era of large factories, every worker was especially useful, and having one more soldier on the battlefield could give your side an advantage. Why grant women the right to vote? Because the economy at that time greatly needed women. Valuing every person was not only a lofty ideal, but also because the economy and military needed everyone at that time. What if they're not needed anymore? For example, modern warfare increasingly relies on high technology. In the future, you'll only need a few soldiers plus some experts in the rear to fight a war, with most of the armed forces being drones and robots. In such a war, humans might actually be a burden. Imagine two groups of drones confronting each other. One group must consult human commanders before firing, and the other can fire automatically. Guess whose chances of winning are greater? Human soldiers might commit atrocities, rape, and robbery. If you just add a moral algorithm to robot soldiers, they'll be more reliable than humans. The only thing humans can do that machines can't, as we said earlier, is consciousness. But we've said before, consciousness might just be a form of mental pollution. At least in terms of production and warfare, consciousness is optional, intelligence is necessary. Modern biology tells us that all life is just a collection of algorithms. Aside from consciousness, humans are nothing more than a computer, and computers can replace humans in any aspect of intelligence. In the past, machines replaced some human jobs, and humans always invented new jobs. But Harari says this isn't a natural law. The current trend is that machine intelligence is increasingly better suited for work than humans. For example, machines can do high-frequency trading in the stock market. Human traders can't react that fast, and machines are already widely used now. Artificial intelligence can replace ordinary lawyers. It reads documents and identifies issues faster and more accurately than human lawyers. Medical diagnosis: IBM's Watson system has a 90% accuracy rate in diagnosing lung cancer, while human doctors only have 50%. Machines can also be pharmacists. The error rate for human pharmacists in the US is 1.7%, meaning there are 50 million prescription errors each year, while a robot pharmacist in San Francisco has handled 2 million prescriptions without a single error. You might think that artistic creation is always the domain of humans, right? A music professor in California developed an algorithm called EMI, which can compose music in the style of Bach, and audiences think EMI's compositions are more Bach-like than Bach himself. The Industrial Revolution brought about the proletariat, and now the artificial intelligence revolution will also bring about a new class, a class that is useless for the economy and military. Now, let's talk about the second type, the non-autonomous people. Even if they're useless, we can't say that people living have no value at all. Don't forget, our original intention in developing artificial intelligence was not to replace people, but to serve people. Or maybe, even if many people are useless, at least some people, even in the eyes of artificial intelligence, are still valuable. But Harari says these possibly more advanced people might have value as a whole, but they might still be valueless as individuals because they might give up their decision-making rights. Google is working on an ambitious project to monitor various indicators of the human body in real time, compare them with a benchmark for a healthy person, and combine them with your specific genes. to provide you with various health suggestions at any time. When to eat what, when to exercise, when to rush to see a doctor, you'd better listen to this system. This system knows you better than you know yourself. Maybe you want to show some rebellious spirit, saying I won't listen. But don't forget, the system understands you very well, so it can always persuade you to do these things in the most suitable way, at the most suitable time. In the end, you'll find that the best thing for your own interests is to follow its commands. Harari says, the relationship between computer algorithms and us can be divided into 3 steps. The first step, the algorithm is like a prophet by our side, like a fortune teller. You ask it anything, but the decision-making power is in your hands. The second step, the algorithm is like our agent. You tell it a big direction and principle, it executes, and as for some small decisions in the execution process, it decides itself. The third step, the algorithm becomes our monarch. You just listen to it completely. Microsoft is developing an artificial intelligence assistant called Cortana. You tell it all your personal information, all the documents in your computer, and it can give you various suggestions. Harari predicts that in the future, we will increasingly rely on such assistants. For example, I want to work at your company. You don't need to look at my resume. We can just let your Cortana and my Cortana contact each other. They agree, and I can go. It's also easy to use this method to find a partner. So my best choice is simply to listen to the assistant. For example, the current president has been doing poorly for 3 years. I really dislike him. But in the 4th year, for re-election, the president implemented various policies benefiting the people, and he's particularly good at emotional speeches. My narrative self was moved, letting me vote for him again. At this time, my assistant will stand up. It tells me, you had strong dissatisfaction at certain times due to this president's policies. Have you forgotten? I indeed forgot, but my assistant won't forget. So my best choice is not to listen to the narrative self, but to listen to the assistant. Then these assistants connected to the network might take further actions. For example, Route A is currently congested. All drivers on Route A have assistants who know Route B is clear, but these assistants consult each other. They can't tell all drivers this news, otherwise everyone rushes to Route B, and B will be congested too, right? So some assistants, for your own good, will deliberately not tell you some things. And there's another possibility. Since nations, companies, deities, these fictional entities can own real property, can algorithms own property in the future? Maybe some artificial intelligence directly starts a company and asks you to work for it. Would you go? We listen to assistants for fitness, shopping, voting, then what's left of our so-called human rights? Maybe there really are some people who are not controlled by algorithms, but control algorithms. These are the third type we're going to talk about, godmen. Maybe there are always some elites who are always useful, always important. Algorithms can't understand these elites, nor do they know their needs. These people are the masters of the world, making the most important decisions behind the algorithm systems. Ordinary people listen to algorithms, algorithms listen to them. But they might not be Homo sapiens, but godmen, people who have actively upgraded themselves using biotechnology. Medical technology in the 20th century mainly aimed to cure diseases, but medical technology in the 21st century might mainly aim to upgrade humans. But definitely not everyone can afford this upgrade. Only a very few rich people can afford the cost. Also, only a very few people. The system thinks it's worth upgrading you. What then? The basic argument of liberalism is that everyone's experience is equal. But think about it, if godmen appear, Homo sapiens can't understand godmen's lives. Godmen also disdain Homo sapiens' lives. Can these two types of people's experiences still be equal? What attitude will godmen use to treat Homo sapiens? Treat Homo sapiens as children, pets, or slaves. So, scientific experiments judgments, combined with these 3 practical trends, indicate that liberalism's days are numbered. A new religion is brewing in the 21st century. Harari says, from what can be seen now, there are two new religions, one called techno-humanism, the other called dataism. What is techno-humanism? We just said, the elite among humans are now trying to use biotechnology and computer technology to upgrade their own lives, wanting to become godmen. In fact, this upgrade has already begun. For example, the US military developed a helmet that, when worn, can help people concentrate and exclude distractions, better for fighting and learning. A person with this helmet is akin to a low-level godman. However, in fact, this helmet has side effects, not in terms of health, but in terms of cognition, and any upgrade towards becoming a godman likely comes with side effects. Because of these side effects, those wanting to upgrade into godmen must think thrice before proceeding. What kind of experience is it to upgrade into a godman? 70,000 years ago, a random genetic mutation in Homo sapiens suddenly gave them a brand new cognitive ability, the ability to jointly imagine something that doesn't exist. Once this ability came about, people without this genetic mutation could no longer understand the experiences of Homo sapiens. Then, if someone in the future gains a brand new cognitive ability through active genetic engineering technology, can we, as Homo sapiens, expect to understand their experiences? Techno-humanism is actually a new version of what we previously discussed as evolutionary humanism. Although it's still called humanism, which believes human experience is the most precious, what they care about is the experience of godmen, perhaps an experience that Homo sapiens cannot comprehend. You might want to become a godman, but don't be too happy too soon. Human experience can be upgraded, but it can also be downgraded. For example, we now have good reason to believe that primitive people had a very sharp sense of smell. They could even smell fear. When people are afraid, their bodies emit certain chemicals. This ability has now degenerated, as it's useless when interacting with many people. Ancient people likely had higher attention than us. When they entered unfamiliar environments, they could quickly identify various details. This ability has also mostly disappeared in most people today. Our intelligence has been upgraded, but these other sensory abilities have actually been downgraded. Godmen focus on upgrading cognitive abilities that are economically and politically useful. As the market and economic system demand these upgrades, they also demand that these people downgrade other cognitive abilities. For example, that attention helmet, the enhancement of attention comes at the cost of sacrificing abilities such as doubt, tolerance, and allowing contradictory emotions to coexist. If you often wear this helmet, your learning ability and exam ability will indeed be stronger, but maybe you will never question the things in the books again. From an exam perspective, this is an upgrade. But from other aspects, is this a downgrade? Another upgrade godmen want to do is to choose their own desires. We already know that humans don't have free will, can't choose desires. Our every decision is the result of different desires waging war and compromising. For example, I'm very dissatisfied with my company's boss. I have a strong desire to rebel, but I also need to support my family. So I also have a desire to endure and stay. Faced with this situation, liberalism requires me to dig deep into my heart and ask myself what I really want. What godmen want to do, however, is simply use technological means to remove those unnecessary desires. My goal is to gain money and power. Any thoughts unrelated to this goal? All removed. Is this really good? Romeo and Juliet's families were hostile camps. They originally shouldn't have fallen in love. This love is a painful love. Then should they take some kind of drug to make themselves not love each other? Harari says, techno-humanists might eventually find themselves directionless, facing another crisis of meaning. Harari is more optimistic about dataism. Let's first talk about a theory that might sound relatively new. Every discipline in the world, whether it's science, literature, music, or economics, is backed by mathematical models. From a mathematical perspective, we can imagine a person, an animal, a company, or a country, all as data processing systems. For example, organisms are just a collection of algorithms. Economics is just collecting data on all parties involved, and then making a decision. All of this is just data processing. Traditionally, people try to understand this data, that is, to gain knowledge from data and then gain wisdom from knowledge. But modern dataists think that some things are too complex. You don't need to understand the data, just let algorithms directly process this data, discover patterns from it, and use it. If you imagine each person as a processor, communication between people is information exchange, then the entire human society is a data processing system. The entire history of humanity is a history of increasing the efficiency of this system. Everything is data processing. With this idea, we can treat all problems as algorithm problems. Then, if we establish a network that connects all data, the Internet of Everything, this network and the various algorithms it contains will know each person better than the person themselves, can help us solve various problems, and make various decisions for us. When that time comes, rather than believing in individuals or in God-men, it's better to believe in this network. If we really have such an Internet of Everything in the future, what will happen? At first, the Internet of Everything is for serving people, letting us live healthier lives, helping us make better decisions. Gradually, people will believe that perfecting the Internet of Everything is the most worthwhile work. Whether you're doing scientific research, being a doctor and incidentally collecting patient data, or creating artistic works, aren't you serving the Internet of Everything? Now, some physicists will say, my life's meaning lies in discovering physical laws, which benefit all people, more important than my personal life. Then, in the future, people will also say, the existence of the Internet of Everything is more important than their own existence. All human knowledge is in this network. All data in the world is in this network. One could say the entire human civilization, even the entire universe's information, is in this network. There will come a day when the Internet of Everything develops beyond human understanding. Algorithms cooperate and upgrade each other. Algorithms themselves produce new algorithms. The Internet of Everything will exist independently of humanity. At that time, the Internet of Everything will become the world's first most precious thing, more precious than humans. Perfecting this Internet of Everything, finding ways to make the Internet of Everything serve people better, becomes a sacred job. The Internet of Everything is God, scientists, programmers, doctors, teachers, all these people working for the Internet of Everything, they're all priests. Perhaps the existence of this Internet of Everything has found a new meaning for human existence. Isn't this a new religion? This is called dataism or dataism. Religion needs values, and the value of dataism is that information wants to flow freely. In the past, we said freedom of speech. This is a human right, but in the future, we'll say freedom of information. This isn't a human right, but the right of information itself. Information wants to let more people see it. Dataists believe that even the producer of this information can't own and control this information. The information itself wants more people to see it. Religion needs precepts. Harari says dataism has two precepts. First, you should connect with as many media and information sources as possible, continuously producing and digesting information, maximizing your information flow. Second, you should connect more things to the Internet of Everything. Even if some things themselves don't want to connect, you should find ways to connect them. What does dataism think of human experiences? It must be experiences shared online that have value. You should record your experiences, upload, and share them. In the eyes of dataists, no matter how thrilling your experience, if the Internet of Everything doesn't know about it, then it has no value. Sharing experiences, perfecting the Internet of Everything, this sum of human knowledge, is where the value of your experience lies. Religion needs promises. Dataism's promise is that if you allow information to flow freely, letting the Internet of Everything become more and more perfect, it can benefit everyone. Even if the Internet of Everything can't solve all problems, it already has tremendous value, and dataism can already reasonably exist. In conclusion, that's the content of this book. But remember, Harari told us at the beginning, studying history isn't to predict. The future has multiple possibilities. Whether Godmen or the Internet of Everything will dominate the world. We don't know which is inevitable. Understanding history is exactly to allow us to consider more possibilities. At the end of the book, Harari invites us to continue paying attention to three big questions, which involve the basic assumptions of the entire book, and perhaps future scientific progress will have different answers. First, is biology really just a bunch of algorithms? Is life really just data processing? Second, which is more valuable, intelligence or consciousness? Third, if those algorithms without consciousness but with high intelligence know us better than we know ourselves, what will society, politics, and daily life be like? What kind of experience is it to know that you are just a computer? Now we've all experienced it. We have one more subjective experience than computers, that is, consciousness, but consciousness might just be a form of spiritual pollution. Computers can completely pretend to have consciousness and pass the Turing test. If consciousness and intelligence are completely independent, any skill we pride ourselves on now can theoretically be done by algorithms in the future. And algorithms will do it better, even understanding us better than we understand ourselves. Then our best choice is to listen to algorithms. If Harari is right about all this, then the conclusion is that life fundamentally has no real meaning. All meanings are just imagined. But what's wrong with that? Don't forget, imagination is a superpower unique to Homo sapiens in the animal kingdom. My advice is to continue living in the world of fiction. I will continue to maintain various imagined communities that I think are valuable. I will continue to increase my experiences, improve my sensitivity. I will continue to ask my heart what it really wants. But, because I know these are fictional, so, if some imagined community demands that I sacrifice my own life or someone else's life to maintain it, I won't do it. When I experience things, increase my experiences, I know my interpretation of these events is just a subjective view. I shouldn't be obsessed with this view. When facing major choices, I will remind myself, the strongest voice inside me right now, maybe it's making the wrong choice. That's the essence of this book. You can click the description below the video to find the link to the book. Welcome to read it. You can also share this book with your friends. If you like the content of Daily Book Dive, click the subscribe button to stay updated. Your encouragement helps us continue bringing book essence to our community. Congratulations, you've finished another book.